The year started off in March of 2009 with a 3-month-old cub, little male cub that was orphaned when the sow was shot and killed in Polk County, Tennessee. Nearby residents had reported the incident to TWRA, and they had rescued the cub. The cub ended up at Ella J Sanctuary in Georgia. Somehow the residents got them to Georgia. We don't have all the details as to why the cub ended up at the sanctuary in Georgia, but was there until TWRA could be contacted and pick up the little bear. And they got it, transferred it to ABR. The little cub, upon arrival at ABR, weighed about 6.5 pounds and successfully grew and remained in the care here until December the 18th. And at that time, he was released weighing a very healthy 142 pounds. And he was released along with some other bears you're going to meet, number 96, 97, and 99. The four of them were raised together and ended up being released together. And this little number 91 was nicknamed Pudge. Then later in March, there were 3 orphaned cubs discovered during a week-long bear relocation project by the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. One of the cubs was able to be successfully fostered with a sow. The other 2 were unable to be fostered and were brought to ABR. There's a little 3-month-old male and a female, and they were not siblings. So all of these cubs that were orphaned were not siblings, but they were both orphaned shortly after exiting the winter den with their mothers. The little female weighed 4 pounds, and the male weighed 6.5 pounds. And you'll see that a lot of the bears, there were so many that came in one right after the other. Some of them had names, some of them had numbers, some were named after the officers. So these were just LA1 and LA2 is how they were noted in our records. And they were introduced to the many other orphan cubs that came through in our busy 2009 season. They stayed here at ABR until late October, and at that time they were transported back to Louisiana. The male weighed 121 pounds and the little female 107 pounds. The bears were worked up, ear tagged, and fitted with transponders for tracking before they were released together for the winter. Now, when we review 2010 next year, we'll follow up because the little female, LA1, ends up being readmitted to ABR. So a little teaser for her story, and she was a very well-known bear at the time as far as locally. So you'll hear more about her story, but the little female ended up being readmitted to ABR in mid 2010. So you have to tune in next Saturday to get the rest of her story. But these 2 were successfully released in Louisiana at that time at the end of the year and sent off to den together. Then in also in March, actually just a couple of days after those, we received bear number 94. TWRA officers rescued a little tiny 3-month-old 4-pound cub from Blount County, Tennessee. And this little bear, for whatever reason, she just never developed the survival skills that she would need for a life in the wild. As she was raised, the other resident cubs at the time all demonstrated proper wild behavior, but this little girl just never caught on. She was very sweet-natured, friendly, playful, not at all aggressive, but she just did not develop the survival skills that she would need to in the wild. And the curator worked and was hopeful by her being around other bears that that would change. However, as the months progressed and she grew to be a 90-pound yearling, it became very apparent that she would not survive in the wild and could not be released. And the Museum of Life and Science in Durham, North Carolina, who we talked about back with bear number 64, Mimi, back in 2006, they agreed to take her in their natural bear habitat. So on January 15th, 2010, bear number 94, Yona, was transferred to her new home at the Museum of Life and Science in Durham, North Carolina, which included waterfalls, deadfall trees, rock formations, and berry bushes. Yona still resides at the Museum of Life and Science with Mimi. That was our ABR number 64, and two other bears, Gus and Virginia. You can get some updates on her on their website. But I did communicate with Sherry Samuels from there this past week, who tells me that Yona is doing very well, and that she's gonna, there's some pictures on their Animal Keeper blog that you can find there, and she'll try to get those to us, and I can share those with you maybe next week. One of the things that I noticed in Lisa's notes here, it did talk about how playful that Yona was. And in reading some of the updates on the Animal Keeper blog at the Museum of Life and Science indicate that she still has that playful nature. And I'm going to be putting all of this write-up about 2009 on our Facebook page later this evening. And with that, there'll be a link to a really cute video of Yona helping the keepers drain the pool last year, even though they did not ask or need her help. But so it seems like she's still got a little bit of that mischief and playfulness in her. But she is still at the Museum of Life and Science, and they report that she's doing very well. Then in April, bear number 95 came to our facility, and just only noted in our records as Park number 1. And this was a little tiny male cub that was brought to ABR that weighed only 2.4 pounds. Now remember, this is April. So this little cub is over 3 months of age and only weighs about 2.4 pounds. The little cub struggled to suckle and appeared to be blind. Upon examination by the vets at UT, it became apparent the little cub had hydrocephalus. Remember, we talked about that last week. We've seen a few of those bears in our history. And that is a congenital birth defect that causes fluid buildup in the brain, causes all sorts of problems. And the little male was humanely euthanized 2 days after his arrival. Then late April, bear number 96, just denoted by the name of the officer that brought him in, Dave Brandenburg, brought in a little 4-month-old orphan cub. We do not know anything about the circumstances as to why this little bear was orphaned, but it weighed 15 pounds and grew strong with several of the other cubs. As I've already mentioned, there were 4 released together, number 91, 96, 97, and 99. So this little male was released in December, and at that time he weighed a whopping 145 pounds. So that was a very healthy bear number 96, little Brandenburg. Then in May, bear number 97, I do not know why the name is Boo 1. Don't know where that came. It wasn't any time around Halloween, so I'm sure Lisa had a reason for calling that bear Boo, but I don't know what it is. But bear number 97 was a little 5-month-old, 3-pound cub that was spotted by residents after they'd seen it in a tree for several hours and no sign of a sow. The Gatlinburg Police Department initially captured the cub, but was instructed by TWRA to release it. And that may have been because the residents had seen it there for a few hours and not enough time had gone by, and maybe hopes that the sow would return and and give the sow and the cub a chance to reunite. However, that didn't happen. And when the cub was seen again at the residence, TWRA picked up the little cub and brought it to ABR. And again, this was one of the foursome that was released together at the end of the year and weighed 106 pounds at release. Then, just a day after bear number 97 was admitted, Arkansas called about an orphaned male cub that weighed 6 pounds and was brought here. Again, we don't know any of the circumstances about bear number 98, and we don't have a lot of pictures of the bears from this year. So yeah, that tells you how busy this year was. And you notice they're just coming in one right after the other. So this bear weighed 6 pounds. He grew strong playing with the other cubs in residence and was released back to Arkansas in the late fall, weighing 72 pounds. Then number 99, Boo 2, again, don't know where the name Boo came from, was admitted in June. And this was a little 6-month-old male cub that weighed 4 pounds, was brought to ABR and spent the next 6 months playing and growing with the other bears I mentioned, 91, 96, and 97. He weighed 76 pounds when all 4 of them were released together in December. Then in July, almost, really exactly a month after Boo 2 came in, 2 bears, 2 7-month-old female cubs were orphaned in Arkansas when their mother was killed. And they remained here at ABR and were released in November, weighing 62 and 85 pounds. And they were just known as AR2 and AR3. In late August, 3 tiny siblings were orphaned when their mother was killed by a vehicle inside the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And in the notes, it said that it took a very dedicated wildlife officer about 3 days of just waiting and watching, trying to trap all 3 of them together. And from the notes, it sounded like maybe they were caught separately initially, but the male cub and the 2 sisters, Lisa had put in the notes that when they got them all back together here at ABR and they were reunited, that they all just immediately started playing and almost hugging one another. So they were these 3, the male and his 2 sisters were just inseparable, very happy to be reunited. And when they were released, the sisters weighed 60 and 86 pounds and their brother weighed 70 pounds when they were released back into the national park. Then bear number 105 came in early October. And this was a 9-month-old, 40-pound male cub. He was orphaned and injured when his mother was illegally killed in Sevier County. And this particular mother had 5 cubs. And we've talked about this before. 5 is rare, but it does occur. 4 of them were healthy and big enough to be relocated and released, just go ahead and be released. However, little number 105 named Wonder, and that name came from the name of the street and area where he was found. He evidently, in trying to climb to safety, caught his armpit on a sharp point of a tree, and it resulted in a pretty severe injury, requiring surgery and stitches through about 3 layers of tissue. And it was noted in the record that the injuries and the risk of infection were serious enough that this cub would have died had he not been brought to ABR. So his siblings were big enough to be released, and he would have been too, except that he was injured. And but he recovered and was released in the spring of 2010, weighing 96.2 pounds. Then in late October, a yearling was struck by a motor vehicle in Unicoi County and suffered a head injury. And it just so happens that a canine officer was nearby and saw the bear get hit, and it was still in the road, managed to get it out of the road, and all she had with her was the leash and collar that used on her canine. So she used that and sort of restrained a very dazed bear number 106, Unicoi, until TWRA officers could arrive. So that's why you see her with the leash on the little bear, just trying to, she used that to get him out of the road, and then held on to him till TWRA was able to get him. He did recover and only was here really less than a month, recovered quickly, and then was able to be released in late November, weighing 60 pounds. In late October, bear number 107 came in from Louisiana and was orphaned after her sibling and mother were killed by a motor vehicle in Louisiana. The little 10-month-old cub was captured by the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries and brought here to ABR, where she remained till spring of 2010. And then with bear number 111 that you'll meet shortly, was released weighing 87.4 pounds. In early November, bear number 108, Newport, nicknamed Newport because he came from Cobb County, Tennessee, a 10-month-old male cub that was orphaned when his mother was killed by a motor vehicle. Sadly, in January of 2010, Lisa actually observed him 60 feet up in a tree napping when the limb of the tree broke and he fell. They rushed him to UT, but he had injuries that he could not overcome and had to be euthanized due to the severity of his injuries. And I can tell you, I know how heartbreaking that was for her and how frustrating. You know, accidents happen, and we've had them happen here. And it's so frustrating when you've put everything into saving a little bear and something happens and you can't. But when he came in, it was said that after his mother was killed, he had been observed by residents for over a week, and it was obvious he was very malnourished and dehydrated when he first came here, but he grew and was healthy, so it would have been very frustrating for Lisa, I know, to have had this happen. Then in mid-November, again, bear number 109, this one named Park 5, came from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Bear number 109 was a 10-month-old female that weighed 20 pounds, and that's a very low weight for that time of year. Orphaned when her mother was hit and killed by a motor vehicle at the Spur in Gatlinburg. And for those who don't know, the Spur is an area of road between Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. And she was released back to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in January 2010 with park bears 102, 103, and 104, and weighed 59 pounds. And it was about this time that an old newsletter has Lisa writing about what a busy year it was, because she had had 19 cubs and many of them, you know, came earlier in the year, or they came and they were starved. And so just very, very busy year. And little did she know that she was going to have 4 more come in at that time. And in November, right around Thanksgiving, bear number 110 came in. An 11-month-old female was captured in an industrial park in Blount County, Tennessee. The little female had been observed by employees of the Denso plant. And the cub was malnourished, dehydrated, had a minor chest wound and a very serious hip wound that would have taken her life had she not been brought here. She remained here where she recovered and was released in May 2010, weighing 80 pounds. She's one of the few that we have pictures of from that time of year. Although there are some pictures in newsletters, the bears aren't identified. So these are the only ones that we know of that we can actually say this was bear number 110. Then in late November, a few days after that, bear number 111 came from Louisiana. 11-month-old female orphaned in Louisiana, weighed 40 pounds. She recovered here at ABR with LA3, which was bear number 107, also from Louisiana. And the two were released together in March of 2010. And LA4 weighed 101.6 pounds at that time. 1st of December, bear number 112, named Sexton, and that's after Officer David Sexton, was captured by him. And the little 11-month-old male weighed only 10 pounds. So this is December, and this little bear weighed only 10 pounds. I mean, this bear was just a month shy of being a yearling. Very malnourished and dehydrated, but he grew healthy and recovered and was successfully released in May 2010, weighing 71 pounds. So he overwintered here with several others that had come in during 2009. And then the last bear of 2009, bear number 113, Hammonds, brought in by Officer Shelley Hammonds with TWRA. This 11-month-old, 8-pound female, as you thought 10 pounds wasn't bad enough, this one was 8 pounds in December. So this is an 11-month-old, 8-pound female cub, was found living under a dumpster and was in very poor physical condition. But she overwintered here and was successfully released in May 2010, weighing 60 pounds. One of the things that one of the newsletters mentioned, and it's humorous, but it's not, because I understand, one of the articles that Lisa had written was sort of a daily diary of what was going on, and it says, March 26th, I can do nothing except feed cubs, clean carriers, mix formula, feed cubs, clean carriers, mix formula, feed cubs, clean carriers, wash cubby laundry, et cetera, and talking about just how busy it was with so many small cubs. And then she mentions feeding time for the Tennessee cubs takes about 30 minutes each feeding. It takes 2 hours to feed the Louisiana cubs each time. And this would have, at that time, she would have been talking about LA 1 and 2. It takes 2 hours to feed them because they have to fight with each other for 30 minutes as a warm-up, fight with me for another 30 minutes, attack the bottles for even another 30 minutes, and then they finally nurse for 30 minutes. And then she goes on to speak about April the 4th. The Louisiana cubs are trying to do me in. They are the most irritable, vicious cubs I've ever encountered. Just as I fuss about them, then they become sweethearts, take their bottles, and go to bed. Next, they bite me, scratch me, and try to break my fingers through the metal reinforced gloves. So very, very busy cub season for her. And while that's humorous to read, you know, a lot of folks think that it's a very glamorous job and to feed cubs. But her description of those little Louisiana cubs reminds me of feeding the triplets last year, because that was about what it was like. It was, and when you are tired and you're running on days of very little sleep and it's 3 in the morning and this bear just wants to fight with you and not take the bottle, it can be so frustrating. So she had a very, very busy year. As I said, 23 bears in all came in. 2 of them died. 1 unreleasable had to be placed at the Museum of Life and Science. But very, very busy year for our curator at that time.